correct seal is that entry into the polling book which says the number is X, Y, and Z. So I want that to be made clear, because as we go through this process, it is evident that there have been illegalities, there has been fraud, and so we're no longer talking anomalies. I want to point out that for the 26th yesterday alone, just to give you a sample, 17 persons were out of the jurisdiction who voted in Region 3. And I must state we have begun to provide the evidence. 18 persons voted using oaths of identity, and only one is in the poll book. So it is not solely not having the poll book. Not having the poll book is a problem. But in cases where you have the poll book, there are no entries, which is just as bad as having no poll book. 9 voted with oath of identity at Rose Hall in Region 6. 6 out of the jurisdiction voted there. In Region 9, we saw a situation where 11 voted without oath of identity, and some were unsigned, particularly at Anai Primary School. And there were 30 proxies with no entry in the poll book. What that means is that 30 people could have been allowed to vote who are not entitled to vote. For those who will say it is 15 and 30 and 10 and 12, keep multiplying it by 2,000 plus, and you will get the gravity of the situation. And so we are of the view that when we look at the deaths, when we look at the people who are out of the jurisdiction and voted, when we look at the amount of unstamped ballots in particularly APNU, AFC strongholds, when we bring together all of this, we're seeing a clear pattern of fraud. We're seeing a clear pattern of election rigging. I want to invite the press to go online and read the rules governing a presiding officer, and it will give you a good idea of what has been happening. I will welcome your questions at this stage. Well, to provide the evidence, you would recognize you have to apply, get the death certificates. We have been doing that. We are also working on the list of persons who were on election day outside the jurisdiction. We note, of course, the attempt to bring somebody and say, we said that they were out of the jurisdiction. But if you follow the procedure, you will know that what happens in there when we are counting is a number comes, the counting agent will ask, did number 326 vote? And when they say yes, we say, well, according to our work and research, that person was out of the jurisdiction. And therefore, if there's going to be any credible attempt to challenge it, they will have to give the number and the name of the person. And I'm not sure that anyone is in possession of that except us at this stage. And we are taking that information, pursuing it, and we will be giving the evidence to the Elections Commission.
There is a particular death certificate that was provided to the press. I think the person in question is Ramadan. And there are reports to suggest that while the AAPNU ARC has indicated or that the person marked as voted, there is evidence to suggest that the person didn't vote. How do you respond to that?
The only way you could provide evidence that the person didn't vote, you will have to have the pink slip and see on that pink slip that the person's name was not marked off. When we are going to ask about somebody, remember the process prohibits us from calling a name. So we say serial number 32. And when the person said serial number 32's name is crossed off, we say we want to state that our evidence suggests this person is dead. Now, I don't know what name they call, but just calling a name is not enough to say it is authenticated. You will have to go, you have to get the number we identified and match it to the name. I could sit down here and say Charles Jones died, but did an APNU AFC person in there said that no, we give a number. And when the GECOM person says that name is marked off, and we will look at it against our list, because don't forget we have a pink list. And when we see it is marked off, we said that person is there.
But Mr. Norton, your party had actually produced that certificate on your social media. So we're trying to find out what information you have to suggest that there was a serial number attached to that name that is on the death certificate that you produced, and what other evidence that this name has been struck off on the list.
Like I said to you, here what is the process. Before we say you're dead, we have to ask in there, did number 39 had the name strike out? When that happens, the GECOM staff in there says either yes or no. Once the GECOM staff says yes, we put in our objection, noting that this person would have died.
Yes for this particular.
Yes, for that particular one, we would have had a yes before we send it out once we have the death certificate.
That this person, the name of this person has voted. The person with this particular name,
The number.
and number.
We have the number. When we call the number, we will ask GECOM, did number 375 vote? And they say, yes, we had it marked off on our list, which is an indication that they were voted. And then we make the objection, and at the right time produce the death certificate.
When is this evidence going to be given to the commission?
What is the evidence?
When?
Well, we have started the process of giving evidence to the commission.
Have you submitted formally? What have you?
Yes, as far as I know, we have begun the process of providing evidence to the commission.
And in the case of immigration,
What specific
What
record?
specifically did you give?
In terms of
For
what?
immigration.
At this stage, what I know we would have done is to follow the legal steps and make the application, which if you read through the law is permitted. And then once we get the information, we will deliver it to...
Just for clarification, what specifically has been presented to the commission? And on this death certificate, there is a claim that there isn't a tick, or the name was not, the serial number was not ticked off.
Well, all I would say to you is this. Our agents ask, and we are asking blind. Remember, we have a slip. So we would know that number 37 is there. And then we ask you, could you state if number 37 voted? And they say yes, which means on their official record, it is marked. We then say, based on our information at our disposal, that person is dead.
sir, was this information recorded in the observation report? If you
Yes, it would have been placed in the observation
Can we
report.
submit a copy of this from somebody? Because we're hearing one version from you and we're hearing another version from somebody else. We're still to hear from GECOM. And clearly what is coming out of APNU is being questioned.
What is being questioned?
There are allegations to suggest that the APNU, while they're making claims that they do,
Has not provided
they're
anything to
baseless.
support
they're
it.
baseless, and that while you're saying that these persons were ticked off, there are evidence to suggest that they weren't ticked off.
Who provided you that evidence?
Well, it was published in an article.
Listen, there's an article, there are many articles that were published in which no facts were given.
Well, Mr. Norton,
Wait a
we
minute,
say
wait
the
a,
same thing.
no, wait a minute.
No, before we go back and forth, we can say the same thing. On this specific death certificate, Mr. Mike Paul was here and he insisted, he later provided the certificate, he insisted that it was ticked off. Later we saw that it was not ticked off. Then the narrative changed to whether the certificate was issued rightly or not. So can you as a party say, look, here is our evidence that a ballot was issued for this serial number?
The party is, as far as I know, already written the commission, and in a structured way, you will get that information.
In a structured way,
Meaning, we have to prepare it. Remember, the chairman says we must prove. As we provide that proof, we will undertake to provide it to you all at the right stage once there is no objection
and
from
for the
GECOM.
persons who are claimed to have been out of the jurisdiction on that day, what evidence is being presented to the commission? You said some was provided.
There are cases where our workers, field workers, went into the field and got names of people who migrated. As I understand it, we can, once we say these are the factors, we can write the Elections Commission CEO and ask them to use their authority to access the database to be able to confirm our data.
So you haven't actually submitted evidence, but rather a request for
No.
GECOM to go look into the
Listen to me. We are supplying what we call evidence. The only persons that can say it is evidence and not hearsay are those in charge of the database.
Listen, you
No, let,
you collected your information based on field work.
correct.
You submitted to the commission that this is what we were told. And you're saying to us that that is evidence.
I'm saying to you that evidence is fact. We come to you and we ask, was this person in the country? And all and sundry say this person was in the country. That is,
Make it a fact.
no. You didn't listen to what I'm saying. I didn't say that makes it fact. I said we provided what we have as evidence. It is now when it arrives at GECOM, for GECOM to do the official thing and confirm or deny what we are saying.
So you're asking GECOM, you're making a request of GECOM to
It
go
is
look into
GECOM,
the
it is GECOM in the final analysis who will have to verify it.
But the chairperson said he who asserts must prove.
Well, we are proving by providing the information. Once we provide you the information, okay? If I go to a court of law and I say, you slap me, and I say to the court that X person slapped me, the court then has to now verify whether that is fact or not.
The court can also ask for a medical record.
Correct, that is fact. So what I'm saying, it is a similar process. We provide the information, and then GECOM is the legally constituted body that can relate to the state agencies and confirm what we're saying is fact. Neither the PPP.
Can you support that position with something? Because GECOM is, from what they're saying to us, that's not their role. The commissioners seem to think that GECOM is not supposed to be investigating this.
Which commissioners? There are two sets of commissioners.
That's what I'm saying, from both sides. They give the impression that GECOM does not have to investigate.
No, I've heard Vincent Alexander. I have heard Vincent Alexander said Pelosi.
We're hearing, as the media, we're hearing different versions.
No.
So I'm
You
asking
just
your
made a
position.
comment. Let me respond to. I heard Vincent Alexander saying that it's an obligation on GECOM to deal with these
Which
irregularities.
is his view, sir. That's not
Now, just now
GECOM's
you said
position.
both sides of
My
GECOM.
point
Now I'm
is,
telling you.
My point is, as members of the media, we have no clear position on what is the case. We're asking, what are you substantiating your
I am
view
saying
that
to you,
GECOM has to investigate? Based on what law?
if you go to the order, the order sets out clearly what has to happen. And even after this, it has to go to the CEO. And the CEO will then do a report, which is submitted to GECOM. So it is clear in the order that GECOM has the capacity to investigate and deal with these matters. It is clear. It is, you know what is unfortunate in this process? One time, when it suits people, GECOM has the power. Soon it doesn't suit them, it doesn't have the power. In this case, we're saying it has the power, and it will do it, and we will await the outcome of the process.
Mr. Norton, with all of these irregularities that have been unearthed by your agents and so on in the company process, and with what is being documented, what would you like to see? What is your objective?
First, I think GECOM has to assess it, and then based on its assessment, make a pronouncement on what should happen with elections. It is not for me to pronounce. I could tell you what I think, but I don't want to do that. I want the process to take its course. Go through what the order said, and based on the order, make a decision. You know, the PPP has been arguing that this is a mere ballot count. And anybody who read the order will know it is not a mere ballot count. It's an attempt to ascertain whether these elections are credible. And you cannot arrive at credibility of an election. You cannot arrive at credibility of an election on a simple ballot count. Let's assume we had done a simple ballot count. You know, just count ballots. How would we have known and focus on those ballots that weren't stamped? Let's assume we had done a simple ballot count. How would we have known about the persons who we just said to you voted 30 proxies not within the confines of the law in District 9? And so one has to understand an attempt is being made to shift the goalposts, to say this is a ballot count. It is not. Let us recall that first the PPP wanted only Region 4 counted. We objected to that. We said it must be a complete count of all boxes. Now, the document called the order was agreed to as a result of negotiations between the parties. So you have a written gazetted order. But yet somebody will come to tell you this is mere numbers. This is both a quantitative and a qualitative assessment.
If the results put the coalition at a win for this election,
If the results
put the coalition as a winner of these elections, will the coalition still accept those results given the number of irregularities you highlighted?
we have said clearly that we want the process to go through. We said it is aimed at determining whether the elections are credible. If the GECOM says they are credible and provide that it is credible, we will accept their position. If they say it is not credible, then it's a totally different thing. For us, this is not solely a question of win and lose. This is a question of placing our electoral system on a path to credibility. We have had cases in Region 6 where we know presiding officers put the polling booth at an angle that they can see so voters will be intimidated, which is a violation of law. In fact, one person was disciplined for it in Region 6. We know that it couldn't be accident that the discipline services votes, particularly, and APNU, AFC stronghold votes, weren't stamped. And so it is not solely a question of who win and who lose. It also has to do with whether the process was credible. And if we don't deal with the credibility of the process, we'll be here again in 2025. Because What is necessary at this stage is for us to have the audit, understand the problems of the system, allow GECOM to make its decision, and then we take action to ensure in future they don't repeat themselves.
Should GECOM decide that the results are not perfect, then what's the next step?
GECOM is to decide that under the rules. Go to the order. It is not for the APNU, AFC, or the PPP to decide that. GECOM has the power to decide, if they aren't credible, what to do. So I don't want to make pronouncements outside of my jurisdiction. I might end up like those who voted that weren't here.
I wanted to ask about the missing poll books. Can you say what other safeguards are there to protect the integrity of the box? And on March 1, let's say March 1, what assurances were there in the system that these boxes would be protected, not just using the poll?
Well, the polling book doesn't come into play on the day you're talking.
In the process.
In the process, we were able to monitor the delivery of the ballot boxes, etc. There were reasonable safeguards. But we had cases, for instance, I can tell you in Region 2, and this was reported. At least 2 polling boxes that should have been at the polling station were at a headmistress or a headmaster. I don't know if it's man or woman house. So generally, we thought the process went well. But there were instances where there were problems. Now, so I'm saying to you, leading up to the preparation for the delivery boxes went fine. But even if that is true, now you would have voted. The book that is identified as the record of the election, what happened election day, is the poll book. Let's assume somebody voted without a finger. You know the law provides for that. If somebody is voting and they don't have a finger, there are a number of things that have got to be done. And then the presiding officer would have had to place in that book, I think it is Form 6, I don't remember exactly, that this person had no finger. And so the person's finger wasn't inked. Now, you can only get that kind of information from the polling book. People voting with oath of identities, or let's say proxy, they claim to have voted with proxy like we saw in the Rupununi. But there is no record in the polling book to say there were 30 proxies. What that means is that 30 people could have voted illegally. And there are a number of safeguards. One of the key ones is the polling book.
Definitely did, but I'm looking at there are a number of safeguards. Is the party now saying that all these safeguards failed?
Permit me to break.
There is also the suggestion that in order for this level of fraud to be perpetrated across the country, then it would have required collusion not only with the PPP and the GECOM staff, but it would have required your agents also being a part of this.
Could I tell you something? Have you followed the law? When I can tell you of cases where I objected. Let me tell you what it says. You can object. When you object, I remember the RO Region 3 coming to tell us, and the Deputy RO incidentally was there, that the PO will decide. Even though you have agents, when an agent make an objection, the PO rules, your only alternative after that under the rules, if you go and read it, is for you to apply to the RO, who is not necessarily at every station. And so, you don't necessarily have to have, for instance, when they're going to put an APNU AFC agent out to the polling station, you didn't need the cooperation of the APNU AFC. You needed just the power of the PO and a policeman who ain't know the land decide, well, if they put you out, they put them out. Now, I want to come to your question of safeguards. Could you tell me what safeguards exist that permit you to know?
Mr. Norton, I'm asking you and the party's position.
All right, well, the party's position is the polling book is critical because there are safeguards. But one of the major safeguards to ensure the integrity of the election is the polling book. And if in these couple boxes, 284 are missing, even with the safeguard, the credibility is in question. And that's the answer.
Mr. Norton, you pointed to a provision in the Registration of Births and Deaths Act that you say allows anyone to get access to a death certificate. I would like to ask you to respond to the entirety of Mr. Natal's argument. He had pointed to a provision in the Access to Information Act which requires you to get the permission of the person next of kin.
First of all, the Access to Information Act is a totally different act. But when you go through, let me listen to you.
I'm sure you would have read the provision that he pointed to. These are two provisions. The provisions that you pointed out and the one that he pointed out appear to conflict with each other. And so my newspaper pointed this to Mr. Natalal last night. And he said that though he acknowledges the provision that you pointed to, there is a principle called implied repeal, which would allow that if two acts conflict with each other, the one that was later passed would overrule the earlier act.
He's being disingenuous.
He is being disingenuous?
That's all I would say.
Okay. And was the APNUFC able to field polling day staff for all 2339 of the polling stations on election day?
I would think we did.
Okay. And my final question, on the issue of migration or foreign voters in all, did you notice foreign voters or persons who are of this jurisdiction and appear to have voted in areas that are in NUFC strongholds?
Well, let me say this to you. I know at one time we were asking questions, just like we were asking. And it turned out when you call the names of the dead, they didn't vote in AP and UFC stronghold. Neither those that migrated. But when we did the same in PPP strongholds, the answer was yes, it's crossed off. And so we concluded that in PPP strongholds, they were allowed to vote. And there is no evidence that that happened in the AP and UAFC stronghold.
Okay, so let me just follow
But
up.
let me add this. Mind you, we didn't make it blanket. We said those polling stations that the POs were compromised by the PPP. And in those polling stations, we see the trend.
One of the things that other party agents have been saying, and this is to buttress their...
We mean by other party agents.
The Citizenship Initiative, the PPP, and I think NUG, they've said that what happens when they open a box is that a coalition agent may point out 40 serial numbers or 30 persons who you claim is dead or out of the country. And then the GECOM staffer would look at the list and find out, okay, only about 2 to 5 of these persons actually have their serial numbers ticked off. So is it that you call these serial numbers because you think that the person would have voted, or you're just calling the numbers because you think they were out of the jurisdiction?
We call the numbers based on the research we did with the aim of confirming that our research is correct.
Okay.
And they were out of the jurisdiction. And when you talk about the PPP, the small parties, if you put it in that context, you will be charged to Caesar. And you charge Caesar to be tried by Caesar. Obviously, if you charge Caesar to be tried by Caesar, Caesar will free himself.
Okay, do you have statements of poll for the areas that you're claiming the irregularities with the poll books may have occurred?
We have statement of poll.
And have you examined those SOPs to determine?
That is basically, like I said before, our prerogative of when we discuss why we discuss it. This is politics. In politics, you have to, first of all, develop your strategies and then operate based on the strategy. Strategically, I see no advantage to in disclosing what you're asking me about.
I'm not asking you to disclose the SOPs. I'm asking you the documentation that your agents would have collected on meeting would allow you to determine the veracity of the claims you're making to an extent.
We have at our disposal the statement of poll, but we cannot use the statement of poll to determine the veracity of what we say. What is coming out of the box is what will determine. One of the problems people have is that they are still focused on election day, but that is passé. The reality is the president and the opposition leader agreed that this process will be undertaken and that this process will determine whether the election is credible or not. And therefore, for us, the focus has to be on this process. It's this process that will determine veracity, not any statement of poll by the APNUFC or the PPP. In fact, when the PPP saw change in one area, I think it was Diamond, they went and changed their figures on the internet, on the spreadsheet. So you can't use a political party to determine credibility. Credibility has to come from this process. And what this process is showing is that there's a lack of credibility in the process.
Okay, let me ask you, because you're saying that you are making claims during the recount with the view of confirming whether an irregularity occurred.
No, I never said that. Let me repeat for you. English language is simple and straightforward. I said we asked to confirm that the person we are talking about did vote.
What percentage of, you asked their names, how many have been confirmed?
I didn't hear that.
The trend, based on your field work, what percentage of the field work is being confirmed or corroborated in the exercise? Because to date we're yet to be shown a single one.
A single what?
An objection made, and it has been shown to be credible.
What does the process say? The process says that when we make an objection, you put it on an objection report. When that objection report goes to GECOM, GECOM will determine. I can go and say it is 60%, but then it's just what is on the objection report. So the question you're asking is really a question for GECOM. When GECOM looks at the data, they will determine what percentage of it.
Couldn't the coalition, and I suppose the politicians generally, couldn't we have saved this country billions and time by just everybody disclosing their SOPs? I understand you speak to strategically using them,
But could I ask you a question? Why do you think all the statements of poll were credible?
my understanding is the statements of polls were prepared by GECOM, copies of which were given to everybody. If everybody were to just come to the table and...
Could I ask you a question? If I go on a tally sheet and I show you the APNU AFC 50 votes, the PPP 10, and then when you go to the statement of poll, it's the other way around. Is the statement of poll correct?
No, I'm saying
No.
everybody come with their statements of
I'm
poll.
trying to show you that if we come with all the statement of poll, it does not necessarily follow that what is on the statement of poll is necessarily on the tally sheet and necessarily credible.
We're not talking about the tally. We're just saying
The statement of poll,
GECOMs and the party.
could I make a point to you? The statement of poll comes from a tally sheet. If a
At each poll.
if a PO, for instance, for whatever reason, does not transcribe to the statement of poll the exact figure on the tally sheet, though you have the statement of poll, you wouldn't have an accurate account.
How likely is that to replicate itself in 90,300.
Did I say it will replicate itself to
The
3?
point is, sir, the differences would not be that much.
That is for GECOM to decide.
What I wanted to ask Mr. Norton is specifically on the issue of your claim of foreign voters.
I never claimed foreign voters. Never did.
The party
Never claimed people migrated. We said people who
Not
were
in the
out,
jurisdiction.
not in the jurisdiction,
forgive me.
voted.
That is one of the issues that you are essentially tasking GECOM with confirming the truth of. So,
GECOM tasked itself with that by the order, not me.
no, you're asking GECOM to
No,
use the power that they have.
Go through the
privilege
order.
that they
The
have.
order is what determines what GECOM will do, not us.
Okay.
It is the order that
Okay,
determines.
fine. That's not my question. The question is, GECOM has not yet confirmed the truth of the claims about the voters who you say were out of the jurisdiction. But yet, when you tally up how much ever thousands of objections you're saying there are, you are presenting it to the public as though it is factual, as though it is evidence, it's already confirmed.
Every-
GECOM has not confirmed.
And first of all, I don't even think you're paying attention to the language.
You said clear evidence of electoral fraud.
Fraud and illegality. But when it
How
came
can
to
you say that
numbers,
if you have
when
not
it came to
confirmed?
numbers, I said that will impact 90,000 votes. And that makes a significant difference if you understand the nuances in the English
How can
language.
you say it's impacting the votes if you have not confirmed that these persons
Because,
were actually
okay,
fraudulently cast?
let's assume, let me just explain it to you. If there's a ballot box with 300 persons that voted, and those votes are recorded as 300, but there is no poll book to confirm, one, the seal wasn't tampered with, two, the proxies, etc., the certificate of employment, that entire box is impacted by the absence of polling book.
My question was specifically about the claims of voters out of the jurisdiction. There is no confirmation by your party.
But the party cannot confirm. The party can get the facts, present it to GECOM, and GECOM has to approach the appropriate government structure to
Yet the
confirm.
party is publishing this as if it is factual.
We are publishing the information at our disposal.
As
When you,
per-
or could I ask you this? The PPP has published a spreadsheet. Is it factual?
I don't know, but I can't.
But they publish it. Every political party
Speak for
publish.
your party,
Every
Mr.
political. You mustn't tell me which party to speak on behalf of.
We're asking you about your party.
I am saying to you, our party has stated it has impacted those votes, and that is a fact.
But how can you say that is a fact when you have not confirmed that?
I'm saying to you, confirmation has to be done by GECOM. I'm saying to you,
So it would be on
An allegation and not a fact, Mr. Moore. That's-
it's not an allegation, it's a more a proposition. It's more a proposition that is,
Propose for GECOM to go looking for the evidence.
no, GECOM is not going looking for the evidence. We are providing the evidence, and GECOM
No,
goes,
sir, you've provided information.
call it what you want.
It's not evidence. My colleague is saying you presented it as fact.
If,
as though it is
could I ask you a
confirmed.
question? If I ask in a room, did number 32, who happens to be Christopher Jones, did he or she vote? And they say yes. And we say, here's a death certificate, this person would have died. Is that fact or fiction?
Has that happened?
It happened more than once. I think you're being circumlocucious and nothing more. Any, you're free to ask the questions, but you keep going on.
Pointless exercise here right now.
Well, if you think it is pointless, you know, it is unfortunate.
No, sir. You're saying you present facts and you're asking GECOM to corroborate these facts.
Correct. What's wrong with that?
We're saying you're not presenting facts, you're presenting
That
allegations
is
based
your
on what
opinion.
you
That is
feel-
your
No,
opinion.
no, sir. Your party has repeatedly
All right,
said...
could I ask you a question?
May I finish? Your party has repeatedly said that what is being presented as objections is based on what they would have discovered in field work. You heard something and you're asking
No.
to corroborate it. You can't
Listen,
call that fact.
listen to me. I'm saying to you, I went into the field And it's the last time I'm trying. I went into the field. Somebody says to me, Christopher Jones migrated, just for the one. I then go in this room. I can't call Christopher James' name, but his serial number is 39. And I ask, could you say if 39 is marked on the sheet, on the list as voted, and they say yes? To me, that is fact.
It is a fact that they voted, but
Let me finish with him and then I'll come back. I'll come back. Now, when we ask and we confirm that this person is out of jurisdiction, we ask you and you confirm it, we put it in the document as fact. GECOM can now check it and decide if we misinform or we inform correctly. And I believe when they do that, they will come up with a result that they were informed correctly.
Mr. Norton, if GECOM decides that enough evidence has not been provided and so it will not investigate. In the case of death certificate, you have it, but in the case of immigration records, you don't. Now, if GECOM decides that they're only going to focus on the deaths, how would you respond to that?
Well, I wouldn't respond to that at this stage. What I will say, our commissioners and GECOM will articulate the position that it has to be investigated, because for you to determine the credibility of the election, you must know who was out of the jurisdiction. Mind you, this is not new to Guyana. There have always been these allegations. And therefore, once they are investigated, GECOM will arrive at the position, and like the president said, we will accept GECOM's position once it has been determined to be credible. Okay?
Before you go, just one more question on the argument over whether these death certificates were illegally accessed. I pointed you to Mr. Nandalal's proposition. The provision he pointed to, and there's the one you pointed to.
First of all, the Access to Information Bill Act is a totally different act in relation to this. I was in Parliament when that act was being done. This is an act that was aimed at dealing with government contracts, a number of other areas. And you can, under the act, apply for information. And the government will then be obligated, in keeping with the law, to release it. The act we are talking about is clear. It says everyone can go into that office, peruse the records, and once they pay, apply for a death or a birth certificate.
So the provision
Now,
he's talking about does not apply?
in my opinion, no.
Okay.
I'm no lawyer, I did some law courses, but just from being in Parliament and actually taking part in that debate, we know that the intention and purpose of that act is totally different to what we're talking about. And that is why I said, in my opinion, Anil is being disingenuous. Thanks. Fine. That will be for a while.